All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Work with Ty Brownlow. I'm your host, Ty Brownlow. Remember, no one is worthless, no story is worthless. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you already know my platform is dedicated to mental health in all aspects. Today, ladies and gentlemen, my very special guest, a little north of the border, of us here, British Columbia, Canada, for the Canada people. Canada.
Yes.
Let me just make it clear for some of you all, Canada. But joining me all the way from British Columbia is Dr. Joan Samuels Dennis.
Yes, you got it right. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you, Ty.
The pleasure is all mine. And pretty much as I opened, I pretty much opened with mental health, but we're talking about trauma. Okay. Yeah. And trauma in many different forms and how it relates to us in a everyday lifestyle without us not really knowing it, but us going through it.
Yeah.
I'm just want to start with you. And as I said before, your area of expertise, community development, trauma recovery, truth, forgiveness, and reconciliation. You have a organization called Becoming Canada, and you're the founder. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I formed Becoming back in 2016. Before that, I was a professor. My background is nursing. I have a PhD in nursing and mental health promotion. And so I was teaching statistics and I was teaching research and all of those sorts of things. But I had actually gone to do my PhD with this particular intention in mind. I wanted to find an intervention that could help people overcome the mental health issues that arise as a direct result of trauma. And so I went through that PhD process, but kind of didn't feel like I found the intervention. And I would find the intervention in about 2015 and then learn the process and then move through the process of figuring out how this actually works and then bettering it to a place where now, if you come to me and you've been suffering with chronic depression for a really long time, I can help you overcome that in about 3 sessions. And I would say for some people, it's as little as 1 session. And if you've been, experiencing things like anxiety, I can help you overcome that in about 4 sessions. So it's possible to end the trauma response. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started.
Okay. Oh, well, hey, I am thoroughly impressed, because as you said, anxiety, 4 sessions, trust me, people walk around with anxiety all day, but
yes.
They have no way to channel it and, come down and present themselves the way they need to be. So
yes.
Well, yes.
And it's just as you said in the beginning, where you said, a lot of us are being triggered, but we are not even aware of what the triggers are. So the things that I know help me to locate the triggers. So by us sitting down and just having a very simple exchange, I then understand, okay, what's your current struggle today? And then once I have that sense of what the struggle is, because we've been talking about it, your body has been raising all the memories. So then I use your body, which houses your memories and your eye, your vision, and a mirror. And then I can locate what initial trauma, like where the original event occurred. I can tell you the month, I can tell you the year, I can tell you the day. And even if you don't remember right away, your body remembers. And then it's for you to take the information that I have just given you to then remember consciously, okay, what happened in 1996 in the month of May on the 15th of the month? Like what happened, And so when we're able to isolate the event like that, it's just by body memory, and we all have body memory. So once we're able to isolate the event, then we move through the process of remembering the event in a particular way, and then releasing the event using forgiveness. And so that's the process. So once I work with a client in that particular way, then it releases. And so once it releases, the triggers that you're always walking around with, well, guess what? They're released too. So then your anxiety then doesn't erupt in the ways that it normally would, or your depression doesn't erupt in the ways that it normally would, because we've taken care of the source. We've gone to the root of it, plucked it out. There might be some root shards that we'll have to go back and get, but for the most part, the big event is taken care of.
Science, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I have to say. That is the science. That is the science.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So pinpoint the day. Hey, May 15th, 1996. I really going on in, but hey, you know what?
Yes.
No, but
and the thing is, Ty, most practitioners that are out there, they want to find the root cause of whatever triggers you are experiencing, but they're gonna work with you through talking to try and find it. And the issue is that most of us are talking and we think it's this thing, but it's not really that thing, right? It's just the thing that's here right now to remind you of the earlier event, right? But because we tend to focus on this thing that's happening right here, like my husband right now is driving me crazy, or, you know, right now my coworker is driving me crazy, and, you know, this harassment that I'm facing at work. Well, then what I'm able to do is to help the person isolate the first moment in time when they felt harassed, the first moment in time when they felt abused, the first moment in time when they felt forced to do something. And so once I go back to that earlier moment, then I bring them forward to then look at the current moment. I say, okay, so let's look at the overlap. What happened here? What's happening here? What happened there? What's happening here? You know, and so once I do that, the merging of the two moments, everybody that we experience, every trigger that we're experiencing is really calling us to remember those earlier moments, take care of the earlier moments so that the struggles stop, right? Because the struggles of today are really preparing you for a healing journey. And that's what most of us miss. Most of us just kind of go, you've triggered me.
Right,
you know? And so rather than focus on, well, where did the trigger start? We just want to get rid of it. You know, like we just want to, you know, easily move into the place where it doesn't exist anymore. But every trigger is here to actually help you out. And the people you think are really awful, they're going to do the most in helping you. But we always misinterpret that.
Okay. All right. Sidebar for a second. What you just said right there was very key. You know, the people that we think are against us or whatever are usually the people in the end that end up helping us. And whatever triggers we may have had in the past with these people, you know, it's for whatever concept, you know, that person is going through internally.
Exactly.
So, I can just say, personally, I just ran into some friends that I haven't seen, well, acquaintances that I haven't seen in 20 plus years.
Yes.
So a lot of what you're talking about, yes, there was like a little level of anxiety, like how will they greet me? How will they take me? You know,
yes.
You know, it was a little like,
yes.
If they say this, I'm like, you know, like, okay, am I going to get upset? Am I going to do this? Am I going to, you know? So I have these little talks with myself or what have you, but in the end, Dr. Joan will tell you it was a very wonderful time. It was a very, like, all that stuff that I was, you know, worried about and, you know, pretty much had festered, man, none of that. It was love. It was all about, hey, I haven't seen you in forever and today. It's just great to see you. And man.
Wow.
So, yes, I resonate with,
yes.
Look, y'all, look, I mean, look, we just had a moment here, people. Okay, all right? I mean, she's in British Columbia. I'm here in Chicago. Okay.
That's right. We just had a moment. We just connected on a whole different level.
Connected on a whole nother level, people. Okay. So Dr. Joan knows what she's talking about, people. Okay, like she knows of what she speaks. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay. So, okay. So let's talk about your clientele. What type of clientele do you normally cater to?
Yeah, so I have just transitioned my practice to focus more on Black entrepreneurs because I want to help them be able to kind of push forward in a powerful way. But prior to Black entrepreneurs, I would say the majority of my clients were Black women. And so I still have other ethnic diverse, a multi-diverse, clientele. But overall, I would say 90% of my clients were females. I would say 80 to 85% of those were Black women. And they were of mixed spiritual backgrounds. So some are Christians, some are, they're just kind of moving through life. I put it that way.
Right. Hey.
And then some people would call themselves more spiritually minded, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's the clientele that I serve.
Okay, all right. Well, you know what? Okay. So, and the reason why
Ask me why I didn't mention the men.
Okay, which is coming up, this is leading to my question. Okay. So a lot of times I hear, because you just really broke it down, like, hey, women, Black women, women of diverse Christian backgrounds or whatever. Well, this person may be this person may be that. So skip it. Yes. Why aren't you seeing more men? Why aren't men coming to more therapy?
I think part of the challenge for men is it's hard to be vulnerable with yourself. I think even women find it that way. So a lot of times I think the men know that there might be an issue that they're facing, but seeking help is really a challenge for them. So the way the men usually come is actually a partner of theirs will come first. And then after the partner comes, then the partner will say, hey, you know what? I think she's pretty good and she can actually talk to you and help you. So then they will come. So I think the men are looking they want to know that it's going to work if they start, right? They don't want to go in, open up, and then just like have the raw emotions there and then walk out and not, feel any better. Like they want to be assured that this is going to actually be effective. I think that's part of it. And then I think the other part is it's hard for men because they've experienced exactly the same things women have. They've experienced the emotional violence. They've experienced the sexual violence. They've experienced the physical violence in the same way. But because they are told, you guys are told, be strong, just, just move through, So I think there is this buy-in to this message that, men just kind of like keep going. And I think that's part of what the issue is. And then there's the next layer. Well, if I actually go and see a mental health person, does that mean I have a mental health issue? And what does that mean? I think there's a struggle with that as well.
And I'm just going to say this, especially for Black men. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm into sports. I like sports. And I know that there have been certain athletes who have come out and spoken out about mental health and how they dealt with it. And, just because I was playing basketball, everybody thinks just because I'm in the league and it's this, that, and the other, that life is great. But no, I'm having panic attacks. I'm going through this, that, and the other. I don't really care about dribbling the ball and shooting or swinging the bat at this, that, and the other, or throwing and catching, what have you. I'm not worried about that. Like I have other issues going on with me that are way bigger than what it is. I consider this my job. Yeah. A job that a lot of people, including myself, would love to have,
Yes.
But, it's just a totally different thing. But I'm just gonna say, I feel we need a spokesperson. Like there really needs to be a spokesperson to say, hey, you know what? Look, I get it. I understand. Sometimes, be a
Yeah.
man, do this, do that,
Yeah.
But in the end, when you turn on your television or you look through social media or, you see all these other things and you hear these stories about people like having these breakdowns and now
Yeah.
all of a sudden they resort to violence,
Yeah.
and, had
Yeah.
they sought the help or, pretty much process it different than, maybe things would have happened. And we're going to talk about the, different types of trauma like in a minute or what have you. But I want to sidetrack it here, ladies and gentlemen, because look, not only does she break it down with the science now, she's also an author. All right. And we're going to talk about, all right. So you are the author of 3 lovely books,
Yes. Yes.
Forgive and Live Fearlessly.
Yes.
Fearlessly. Forgive, Master the Art of Letting Go, and Becoming, The Journey to Love.
Yes. Thank you.
No. Like I like that one because it's smooth and it's very
Yes. Yes.
But anyway, can you please take us through these books and how can they be a help to those who may be going through a little trying time right now?
Yeah. I think one of the feedbacks that I've gotten from 490 Forgive and Live Fearlessly is that not only does it transform the reader, it because the book is designed in such a way that I tell you my own personal story of experiencing some traumas in my life, and then how I started the journey towards healing myself. And I won't take all the credit for that process, but it was a process that occurred over a 7-year cycle, I would call it. And so in the book, I introduce where my call to the healing process came. And then after that, I walk through the different moments in my life that I had to forgive and show the person who's reading how I did that. And then beyond that, I talk about what happens after the healing. Because what we as Black people, and I'm going to say we specifically as Black people, we have a spiritual side to us that I think we often don't allow to come forward. And it's not that we don't allow it, it's our trauma that doesn't allow it. But once you move the trauma out of the way, this very natural part of who we are comes forward in this beautiful way. And that part of us knows our purpose, that part of us knows the dreams and visions that are there for our lives. And all of a sudden we're able to, with clarity, express that. And then after we have the clarity, then we move into pursuing, that vision or that destination that we're supposed to go to. So 490, it tells the story in such a way, it's a very personal story, but at the same time, it's also very clinical in the things that I introduce. So what I want the person who's reading the book to know is I'm a real person. I had my own healing journey to move through. I did it. It's possible. And not only that, you can do it too. So as they go through the book, what they will find is it triggers certain memories for you. It might be a very small part of my story, but as you read the book, it's going to bring forward this thing that you need to pay attention to. So I've had people say things like, I was molested when I was so-and-so old. I don't even have molestation as part of my story. But by the time they read through the book, I had this one person say, just by reading your book, I was then able to overcome the side effect of my molestation, which was she was constantly masturbating. And so for her, this was an addictive part of the harm that was done to her. And just by reading the book, somehow, some way, somehow, she was able to overcome that aspect that she wanted to let go of, right? And so it does these things, and I've heard that in multiple ways from multiple people. It helped me overcome this, right? And that was just by reading. So that's $4.90. And then there is the Ultimate Forgiveness Journal, and that's Forgive, Master the Art of Letting Go. And for that one, as a clinician, I took the tools that I use on a regular basis and I put them into this book. And then I created a template of sheets for doing a forgiveness. So then I give you 40 forgivenesses. And the reason why I put them as 40 is because after 40 forgivenesses, there's this revelation that comes about who you are, not anybody else, but about who you are. So every forgiveness that we do has 7 lessons that's embedded in it. But because we don't normally think of forgiveness as a very systematic process that we have to move through, we go, oh, you know what, I'm releasing that emotion. So, but that's not what forgiveness is, right? Like, okay, I'll be friends with you again, but that's not what forgiveness is, right? Forgiveness is a very conscious process of looking at another person, and by looking at another person and what they have done wrong to you, you learn about how you love, you learn about what you fear, you learn about what you want in life, you learn how to act in the next moment in order to do that thing and achieve that thing that you want. So it not only releases emotions, it releases memories from the past. Which memories particularly? Who you were before the trauma happened. And then what were you supposed to do just before the trauma happened? And then the interruption came, which is the trauma, which is what you're supposed to overcome. But it's the remembering of who you are and the remembering of what you were supposed to do. That is the memory that brings you back to the place of what I call reconciliation with self. Now, once you do that, once you reconcile with yourself, then a whole bunch of doors begin to open. And what you realize is that your life begins to shift in all of these wonderful ways. So the journal, I say, commit to knowing yourself and discovering who you are. So every forgiveness, you write it down. What am I forgiving? What did I want in that moment? What did I get instead? Because what you wanted in that moment is still what you're asking. So it helps you to realize what you're wanting. And then when you get 40 wants and you put them all together, you see whether or not those wants are the same, or they kind of go off into different categories. And it is kind of like the mushrooming of the wants and seeing it, knowing it, that you can then say, okay, so that's what I want in this life. Let me go after it. And one by one, you go after it.
Process. Okay. Dr. Joan, okay, all right, you're on to something. I mean, we may have to get you here in the States. No, Dr. Joan, like.
I am coming to the States. I'm coming to the States in April.
Okay.
And we'll be doing in Charlotte, North Carolina, we will be doing our first Truth, Forgiveness, and Reconciliation ceremony as a group of Black people. I am super excited about that one. Okay. So we're still working on the details, but yes, in Charlotte, North Carolina, we're going to get together as a group of Black people. We're going to forgive the white people. You know, I think it's an important thing for us to do. Yes! Because we're going to learn from like a people level. We're going to learn from a people level who we are and what we were supposed to do, before this thing called the enslavement experience happened. We're going to remember that. Okay. And then as individuals, then I'm going to teach individuals how to recognize their traumas and then go back to those moments and remember who they were just before the moment and what they were supposed to do before the moment, and then get on with forgiving it so you can actually do the thing you were supposed to do.
Okay, look here, y'all. Dr. Joan has officially blown my mind, okay? No. So I was trying to hold off on posing a question, but the way you just brought that, oh yeah, now I just have to bring the question. So like, we're going to ease it back now into
Yeah.
what we originally were discussing about trauma.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to break this down in two parts. Okay.
Yeah.
There are all different types of trauma. All
Absolutely.
right. You know, like trauma can be divvied up into so many parts, but there are three main types of trauma.
Yeah.
There's acute trauma.
Yes.
There's chronic trauma.
Yeah.
And there's complex trauma. Okay.
Yes.
Can you pretty much explain to, you know, the people out here the difference between the three and how all three may play a part in our everyday lives, but subconsciously, you know, well, physically and here and now, we're not seeing it, but it's happening to us, but subconsciously, you know, it's triggering so many, you know, things. And
yes.
We're just
it's a great question. And I'm sure your audience already knows, but a trauma is defined not by the incident itself, but by our response to the incident, right? So the response typically is this: I become afraid, I become uncertain, I feel as though I am being reprimanded, or I would say in the extreme, punished. I feel overwhelmed in that moment. I feel panicked in that moment. And in that moment, something happens. I separate from myself. Okay. That's kind of the way that we need to understand a trauma. Now, in the acute type of traumatic moment, say you have a car accident, right? So the acute is an intense moment. It's a sudden moment. It's something that was perhaps unexpected. And because it lasts only a small period of time, we can say that's the acute. Now, the more chronic, and so let me give you the example of a child who is molested or several times or even over several years. That is chronic. Watching someone die and over a period of time, that is chronic as well. If it's a longer period of time where there are multiples of the traumatic encounter, then we call that the more chronic encounter or trauma. Then there's the complex, where there might be layers in terms of how the trauma occurs. So you can have one traumatic moment, and I'll give you my life experience as an example. When I was 10, I lived in Jamaica and I was then preparing to migrate to Canada. And so on the day or in the week that we were supposed to leave, my brother was hit by a car, and I saw him hit by the car and fall unconscious immediately and thought, oh my God, he's dead, right? That's an acute experience. Then I arrive in Canada and I would now say I had PTSD. And so, you know, the shock of that moment, and most Black people don't know, oh, if a kid's seen something like that, they probably have PTSD. You know, you got to help them out. So I didn't receive any therapy for that. Then I come to Canada and I'm a different person because PTSD makes you a different person. Now I'm encountering my mother, and my mother is chronically stressed, but my mother also deals with her stress in a very physical way. So it's not just me, it's my siblings that are with. And so now we enter this space with our mom that we have not lived with for over 7 years. There's a new orientation, but there's a chronic physical abusive kind of way that my mom acts that is now playing a part in the story. So you got the acute, now you got the more chronic, right? And so the layers of the moments that we have that are traumatic, then they begin to interplay with one another. Here's the thing. Whenever you encounter a trauma, there is a moment where the one who has traumatized you, you literally have these neurons in your brain. They are called mirror neurons. It's a way of helping us to understand the intention of another person's action. So the guy coming with the car, right? We saw him, you know, like he should have kept going, right? Like he should, but he was drunk. And then he had his eyes on us as opposed to the eyes on the destination where he should have been going. Because, you know, wherever your eyes are, that's where you go. And so he should have had his eye on the road. I saw him coming. My brother and I saw him coming. We moved off the road. It should have been a non-incident. So in that moment, guess whose mind I step into? I step into the mind of the person that is going to do the wrong, which is this guy driving the car towards us. So there's a movement into the other person's consciousness that we're unaware of in a traumatic moment. In moments like when I encountered my mother, then there was a moment where I would step into her consciousness and what she was saying, what she was feeling, what she was doing. And the challenge is once you step back into yourself, you have taken everything else the other person thought, said, did, and now that sets in place a pattern, right? It sets in place a pattern where now you then begin to repeat the cycle and the pattern. Every time I was supposed to launch into a new and better place, I call it my promised land, the goddamn car would show up. You know, it wouldn't be the same person,
Right.
But somebody would come around a corner. They're supposed to keep going their direction. All of a sudden they're impacting my life in this way. And I'm going, what the hell is going on? And so that pattern kept cycling until I forgave the driver and the pattern stopped. Then, of course, the cycle with my mother, there'd be moments where I'd be doing something. It's really, it's an assignment of some type. And, you know, all of a sudden this person comes in from nowhere and they're not physically beating me, but they're finding a way to like cut me down at the knee, you know, so that kind of process happens. And so that pattern, once it's established, it doesn't end until you go through a conscious process of thinking about what was I doing just before that happened? Who was I just before that happened? What was it that happened? Okay, what did I want to happen in that moment, right? If love had shown up in that moment, what would it have looked like? But instead, something else showed up. Well, guess what that thing is? It's just our fears, right? So now you isolate all these pieces of information and then you make a decision. Okay, the pattern's going to end now, right? And I'm going to move on with my life. And once you can make that kind of decision, then there's a whole bunch of things that naturally fall into place. You know how it goes. Once you say, I'm going to do this thing, all of a sudden the coach shows up to help you with that. Your friend has something, you know, so then once you make the decision, naturally, all of those things that you need, the resources that you need, they show up. Yeah.
Okay. And broken down, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So, I mean, but that's how we live our lives, you know,
Yes.
on a day-to-day basis. And
Yes.
that's why therapy is important, people, because we're walking around with a lot of trauma built up in us, and it comes out in ways that, you know, sometimes we just can't control.
Yeah.
Whether it be like emotional crying or, you know,
Yes.
you're just not level-headed and, you know, you just go into like a rage and it's just anger and you
Yes.
literally see flashes of white, you know, and that's it, you know. No, because everybody talks about a blackout, but it's really not a blackout. It's white. That's
Yes.
how you know
Yes.
you're at your peak, ladies
Yes.
and gentlemen. That is a scientific. That is a scientific fact, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Trust me, I know. I've been at my scientific peak. Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the second part of this question is, let's talk about trauma throughout Black History. This is Black History Month, okay?
Absolutely.
So I just want you to give the audience a quick breakdown. Let's just talk about this trauma from slavery to civil rights to, you know, us out here, you know, like actually owning land, but still having to like fight others, you know, white people, others as well, you know, you know, just like a say-so, you know, in my community, in my school board, whatever, you know. But let's talk about that trauma throughout Black history. Like, how was that played, you know, from like slavery to now? And What is it that, we can do almost in a sense? I don't know.
Yeah. The number one thing that I talk about is because the traumas, they remain the same. I think the thing that I would preface even this conversation by is that the people who wound us, they have that in their own experience. So one of the things that I've been thinking about and wondering at, because I would need to go study history to figure this out, is who was it that took over the European, and I would say mostly, the Queen's family? In what way were they impacted by some incident that happened that then launched them into this desire to then go out and conquer pretty well all of the world, and then step into this place where they consume every resource that there is, right? So one of the things I've always said is that the most wounded people are actually the white people, because then the harm that they perpetuate against others is really about controlling their space and the fear that others could possibly occupy their space. But where does that fear come from? I still have to, figure out the answer to that question. But to get to the question that you have, which is, what are the experiences that we've had? Well, we've talked about some of those experiences. They're still the same. It's still emotional abuse. It's still physical abuse. It's still sexual abuse. It's still the beatings. It's still the controlling of people to a level that is beyond understanding. How do you make the decision to annihilate the Aboriginals? How do you make a decision to then, physically restrain an entire race, right? And that's what they've done to us. So the harms are going to be on multiple levels. It's going to be the acute types of traumas that, we've just talked about. But then it's also going to be those chronic traumas that we've addressed as well. And then, of course, as I've mentioned, the layers of it, it sits in us. So what we know, as I talked about the body at the beginning, is that we house the memories, not just of this life experience, but through a process that is genetically based, DNA based, called epigenetics. There's an imprint of fear from the previous generations up to 7 generations. So sometimes, Ty, you could be wondering, well, why am I panicking? Why am I feeling anxious? Well, maybe it's not your anxiety. Have you ever thought about that? Maybe it's your grandmother's anxiety or your great-grandfather's anxiety that you continue to experience, but you're associating it with something that's happening in the present day, right? Now, the thing is, the fear goes from one generation to the next, and it is imprinted, right? And they've done this scientifically to prove in mice, especially, that if they traumatize a mice and then traumatize the mother and the father, then both of those having then the next generation of mice, whether the mice in the next generation is traumatized or not, in fact, they didn't traumatize them. If they bring a certain scent, which reminded them of the trauma, then the mice reacted the same way that even their great-great-great-grandparents acted. And they were never traumatized. All they showed them was the signal that they showed to the grandparents at the same time. So in one example, they sprayed perfume as they shocked the mice. And so mother and father were sprayed, and then the electrocution happened, to the point then where there was this fear response of just like the shivering kind of response. And then they bred the two. And then they tracked by spraying the perfume in the next generation. The fear response would start with no trauma. Then they would breed those ones and then go to the next generation. Same thing, up to 7 generations. But it was strongest in the first to the 4th generation. This is what we're experiencing. Now, with the mice, they didn't continue to traumatize them, so there was an end point. But with us, it has continued. So what happens is our trauma response, the fear response, continues. And again, oftentimes we're responding to things thinking, well, it's my present day that matters, but we're really carrying some stuff from the previous generation. This is why it's so important for us to now forgive what the atrocities of the past. So we can deal with the present day and what has happened in our current life, But in order for us as a nation,
Mm.
the Black nation, the African nation, the melanated people nation, whatever you want to call it, in order for us to now heal completely, en masse, we're going to have to come together as a people and begin to diffuse what has happened. Remember who we were before the event happened. Remember what we were supposed to do, and then get on with doing it.
Mic has been dropped. And it's not coming back, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, you have destroyed Word with Ty Brownlow today with the I love it. I love
Yes.
it. Love
Yes.
it. Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let me just ask, if people want to get in contact with you, how can they do so? Website, social media, what have you? How can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, drjoan.ca. I know you guys use the .com, but just drjoan.ca. From there, you can also send me an email at connect@drjoan.ca. You'll find me on social media more under my podcast, which is called Hey, I'm Listening. That's on Instagram. And so, yeah, that's how you reach me.
Okay, all right. Look, reach out, people, because I'm telling you right now, Dr. Joan's coming back.
I would love to come back, Ty.
Oh, yes, but we'll talk about all that later. But anyway, I've come to the last question, but this is the question that my show's known for, and I would love to hear your answer. Dr. Joan, what is the one word that best describes you and why?
Peace. You know, as I moved through my healing journey, there was a peace that came. And I think that's the thing that I celebrate the most, is that I have a peace that goes deep, deep down to my very soul. And I'm so grateful to have that. And that's the reason why I do the work that I do, and why I think it's so important for us as a people to move through a healing journey. So I want you to experience the peace. I want your body to be free of any ailments. I want your thoughts to be free of any fears. I want every belief that you hold to be unified in that place of love. So peace, that's my word.
Peace. Hey, look, man, what? Conductor, light, pillar, however you want to call it, you know, like I've used so many words over, you know, the years, but look here, truth. Yes. I know we talked about that today. Yes, her area of expertise, truth. And, yes, you know, just being forward with like the truth and, yes, you know, not like sugarcoating it or whatever, but getting to the layers, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to the layers. Like, oh yes, man, we experience trauma every day. Yes, things are happening to us every single day, but hey, we're still here, okay, as a people. But we have to get to these layers. Let's uncover these layers. Yes, let's go to therapy. Man, let's get Dr. Joan in the United States first and foremost, okay? And then, you know, man, like, yes, you know, like, yes, let's have sessions with like Dr. Joan and those like her, you know, who are like bringing, man, peace.
Yes, peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, look, Dr. Joan, let me just tell you right now, I have enjoyed you. And as I said before, this is not the last time you will be on this platform.
Thank you, Ty.
Look, oh God, look, man. Mind blowing. I hope y'all been, man, look here. There's been church, school, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, we didn't have all that wrapped into one today. Okay, so there it is. All right. Informative content, people. You're not going to find it anywhere else. But on that note, this has been Word with Ty Brownlow. I've been your host, Ty Brownlow. Remember, no one is worthless. No story is worthless. You can follow me, all social media platforms, Word with Ty Brownlow, or you can just go to my website, tybrownlow.com, get this wonderful conversation, plus other great conversations as well. Dr. Joan.
Ty, thank you. Peace.